Hello, my name is Nick Kirsop-Taylor from the University of Exeter. I'm also the Secretary of the Political Studies Association's Early Career Network. Thank you for participating in our conference and for joining in this workshop today. I'm going to be giving a short workshop session talking about alternative publication venues as a political studies early career researcher. As ECRs, we're all live to the story of publish or perish and why building an academic career and creating an academic persona for ourselves is predicated upon our ability to be able to put our ideas out into the public forum. That is publication. So publication is a critical aspect of what we're doing in terms of developing our own careers. But at the same time, it can be incredibly difficult for early career researchers to understand the process of publication, to understand where they should publish, to get enough time to do it, to be able to fit it in amongst their doctoral studies or their postdoc studies. So, whilst it's important, it can also be challenging, an incredibly challenging process. And whilst we all aspire towards significant substantive papers that come from our doctoral studies and ultimately towards monographs and more substantive pieces of work, the road towards that isn't necessarily always in standard publications. And in fact, there are a number of non-traditional publication formats in peer-reviewed journals which can be equally as important in terms of building up your experience, making a name for yourself, identifying the research field or subdiscipline that you work within. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to talk very briefly about 4 different types of non-traditional format. This is all supported by a blog that I wrote for the PSA, which you can find online on the PSA site. So the first part I want to talk about today is the book review. So most of us probably have a sense about what we think a book review is. For those that don't, essentially what we mean is when a new book is released, a new substantive piece of work is released, then there's not some journals give an opportunity for other scholars to read that work, to critically appraise it, to identify what's good with it, how it builds research, how it builds our ideas, but also where it identifies gaps in literature. And to use that as a platform for talking about the work, who should be interested and why they might want to consider purchasing it. Often book reviews are quite short in nature, i.e. around 500 to 600 words, and they have a quite prescribed kind of format in terms of what you talk about. A number of very excellent high standard journals offer book review opportunities, and the other advantages are that you often get to keep and purchase, they purchase a copy of the book for you, which you get to keep. And you also get to associate yourself with this new piece of work, with this particular emergent field, or whatever that might be. So it can be a good opportunity for associating yourself with something, getting a copy of the book that you might want, which might be quite expensive otherwise, and also getting some experience in publishing in a high standard journals. So some fantastic examples of the kind of places where you can publish book reviews are journals such as Environmental Politics and the Journal of Politics are good examples. So the second one I want to talk about are review articles. So review articles are opportunities for you to read and synthesize a particular literature, leading to some understandings of where there are opportunities to enhance that literature. If that sounds familiar, essentially what we're talking about is a literature review, which many of us will have to do as part of our doctoral studies anyway, or subsequent postdoc work. Review articles are shorter pieces than a standard literature review chapter in a PhD, but really what it gives you an opportunity is to transform what you do in your doctoral studies through your PhD into a piece of written work which is published in a journal. So some fantastic places where to do this are, for example, the British Journal of Political Science, but also Political Geography as well. The third one that I wanted to talk about was the early results type. So essentially this is a piece of work which allows you to publish the results that come from your doctoral studies or some postdoc work without a huge amount of introduction or theoretical setup, or even necessarily a significant discussion of the findings leading to conclusions. It's fundamentally about showing what some findings are based upon some research. Largely, this is meant for rapid dissemination, so it's a means of getting out important or interesting findings as soon as they come out. But for those people for whom it's appropriate who do that kind of work, then it's a good opportunity for also publishing, getting your name into a certain field. And a good example of that is you could look at Political Studies Review. So this is a Political Studies Association flagship journal. And the last one I wanted to talk about, number 4, was the short article. So essentially, this is a format which is like a standard journal article, but just shorter and geared towards early career researchers. What that'll often mean is the word count is smaller. There's often just a single peer reviewer, and the process is expedited and expedited around the kind of the considerations and concerns of early career researchers. So a good example of that is the journal British Politics, but also European Political Science. So in summary, hopefully this little short talk has given you a sense of some of the other opportunities there are for publishing in non-traditional formats on your road to publishing the more significant or substantive pieces that you want to publish eventually. But also it should be said that these non-traditional formats also give you an opportunities throughout your career as an early career, but also going into your full career as an academic, for publishing pieces of work which are about literature reviews, about substantive findings, looking at, reviewing new pieces of work by other scholars. So these are all things to bear in mind. Some final advice is, whilst the process of publishing as an ECR can be quite challenging and time constrained, probably the best advice is to just get started, to get on with it. Do have a look at the blog, because it does lay out specifically, in more detail how these different non-traditional formats work. And thank you once again for participating in this conference and this workshop. Thank you.